The vanished Swedish city of Krona can say with absolute certainty there was once a city called Krona in northern Sweden, but everyone seems to have forgotten it ever existed. I'm a policeman stationed in Kalix, a town not far from where Krona should be. Yet around Kalix, there's no trace of any former city. The spot that's supposed to have been Krona is just a dense, unbroken forest. But some clues, one's tied directly to me sure that city was real. It's as if the entire world has erased Krona from its memory. I can't explain why or how it happened, but that's the only conclusion I can draw. It all started when two Romanian blueberry pickers showed up at my small office. They said they'd found something deep in the woods. They spoke little Swedish or English, so they couldn't explain exactly what it was, but it was clear whatever they'd seen had left them utterly terrified. From what I could piece together, it had something to do with the human body. I fetched a translator from a nearby town. With their help, I finally learned the truth. The two men had found the body of a child, no older than 10, in the trees. They led me, two of my colleagues, and an ambulance to the spot. By the time we arrived, the sun had hidden behind a thick bank of fog. We left the road and ventured into the forest, heading for the body. Dealing with a child's corpse unsettled me, but I'd handled similar cases before: car crashes, things like that. I told myself it was just another routine call, no big deal. When we got close to the site, the Romanians stopped. They refused to go any further, no matter what. The fear in their eyes was far worse than I'd anticipated. One of my colleagues stayed with them. The rest of us pressed on. Soon, we spotted a boulder, one that must have been carried there by glaciers during the Ice Age. My colleague walked around to the back of it. A minute later, he came running back, his face as pale as if he'd seen a ghost. He doubled over and vomited right in front of me. It's on the other side," he gasped. I didn't ask what he'd seen. I just told the paramedics to follow me, and I prepared to see the body myself. What we found on the other side of that boulder was utterly beyond all reason. It was the upper half of a blonde little girl. Her lower body seemed fused with the boulder, as if she tried to pass through it like a ghost, only to solidify midway, or, as my colleague put it later, as if she'd been teleported straight into the stone. The girl was staring out at the forest with sad, lifeless eyes that seemed to tell a tragedy no one would ever know. The paramedics with me averted their gazes in silence. They were horrified by what had happened to her, but I couldn't look away. I've never been religious, but that experience made me doubt my own understanding of the world. Not just because of the girl's grotesque death, half devoured by stone. There was something else about her, something that left a hollow ache in my chest. It felt like my soul had been torn open, and that gap was quickly filled with an overwhelming sadness I'd never known before. It was unbearable. And worse, she felt familiar. I couldn't place where I'd seen her, but her face was like a dream I'd just forgotten. Blurry, but hauntingly recognizable. We pulled ourselves together and talked, trying to make sense of it all, but we had nothing. Meanwhile, the paramedics began examining the body. We focused on the facts we could see. The girl was wearing a pink jacket. In one pocket, we found a strange flower. Its color was bizarre, like the wing of some exotic beetle, and we found a yellow library card. The writing on the card confused us. It said Krona Library. The girl had written her name on it. When I saw that name, the world spun violently around me. In childish handwriting, it read, Isabella Lake Celius. "Sir, that's your last name," my colleague said. "Why, yes," I stammered. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't make sense of my own thoughts. "Do you know her?" I don't. I've never seen this girl in my life. It must be a coincidence. A terrible coincidence." My colleague said nothing. "There's something else on the ground," one of the paramedics said. Beneath the girl, on the blood-stained moss, was a notebook. It must have fallen from her hand. Her arm dangled limply just above it. I picked it up and flipped it open. It was filled with writing, but the handwriting wasn't the girl's. "Sir," another paramedic said, "we'll need tools to get her down." "Right," I answered distractedly, slipping the notebook into an evidence bag. "There's another thing," the paramedic added. "What?" "The blood. There's too much of it," he said, nodding at the ground. What do you mean, too much? Sir, look under the stone, he explained. A single child couldn't have shed this much blood. After a moment of silence, I said, we need to go back. Get more appropriate equipment. A day later, we managed to saw off the girl's upper body and take it to the morgue for examination. We tried using a crane to lift the boulder, but it wouldn't budge an inch. So we dug a hole under it, no sign of her lower half. All we could do that day was collect as many blood samples as possible, while the forensic team did the autopsy. Read the notebook. It told the story of Krona. At first, I thought it was just a story too wild, too insane to be real. I figured it was nonsense written by the person who'd killed the girl. Then, a few weeks later, the forensic lab called. I still can't believe what they told me, but they said their results were absolutely conclusive. Because the girl shared my last name, they'd run a DNA comparison between us. It was my idea. I didn't want anyone else speculating. We'd assumed the DNA test would yield nothing. But the result? That young girl Isabella was my daughter. And I know for a fact that's impossible. Continued 10 years ago, I was still with my ex-wife. I never cheated, not once. We got divorced 5 years later. If she'd been pregnant back then, I would have known. But the test results were right there. No mistakes. I copied down the notebook's contents, hoping anyone might remember Krona and the people who once lived there. If you have any information about this, contact me. Below is the full text of the notebook. My name is Helena Fredrickson. 5 years ago, I was a completely different person. I was younger, yes, but not just in body, in spirit too. Back then, my life was filled with joy. I had hopes, dreams. Now, all of that is gone. I don't have much time left, but I'll try to write down everything, explain what we went through, what the whole city went through. The event we all came to call the incident happened on July 9th, 2013. I'd gone to Krona that day to take my niece, Isabella, to the opening of Redwood Grove, the new amusement park, said to be the largest in Sweden. Isabella had begged her parents to take her to the opening, but work kept them tied up. So they called me. I was their first choice to look after her, their only trusted one. Now, looking back, I wish they'd never trusted me so much. We arrived in Krona early hours before the opening. That way, we wouldn't spend the whole day waiting in line. The weather was perfect. A light drizzle that morning had made me worry, but by the time we reached the city, the sky was cloudless. Isabella chattered the whole way about how much fun we'd have. Seeing her so happy made my chest feel warm. A main road was closed for a military parade, so we got to the amusement park a little later than planned. But it didn't matter. If anything, it made the city feel more festive. To get around the parade route, we had to take a bus to Re Square in the city center, then the subway to the Yellow River Commercial Center, the district with Sweden's tallest skyscrapers. From there, we could walk to Redwood Grove. The amusement park entrance was packed. Turns out, lots of people had come by ferry and didn't even know that route existed. In the end, we still had to line up to get in. Isabella didn't mind much, but I knew she'd get hungry soon. I worried it would ruin her mood. Luckily, a man was pushing a cart along the line, selling hot dogs. I bought Isabella a hot dog and a soda. Her parents didn't like me giving her junk food, but I figured they'd understand just this once, for the occasion. The vendor also sold red balloons. Isabella said she wanted one. I tried to explain, if we bought it, we'd have to carry it all day, and there would be plenty more balloons inside the park. But she wouldn't listen. Reluctantly, I bought her the balloon. No one, not a single person, could have guessed their lives would be shattered in the next few minutes. Isabella let go of the balloon by accident. I braced for her to cry, but she didn't seem upset. We watched it drift up, higher and higher, until it shrank to a tiny red dot in the sky. Then it vanished. Just like that. Where did it go? Isabella asked. I had no answer. The balloon was just gone. I don't know, I said. Maybe it popped. But an indescribable sense of unease gnawed at me. Something was wrong. Minutes later, a strong wind picked up, carried with it a putrid stench like rotting flesh. That smells bad, Isabella said. Her light brown hair whipped around her face in the wind. What is it? I held her hand tight. People around us started casting confused glances, looking around. The cheerful mood dissolved into tension. Something was happening nearby, but no one knew what. Alarms wailed in the distance. From the business district, it seemed. "Oh my God!" a woman shouted, pointing at the skyscrapers. "The top's gone." Even from this distance, I could see she was right. The top of the tallest building was gone, like someone had sliced it off with a knife. Isabella was too short to see, but she picked up on the fear around her. Her lower lip trembled. "Are we still gonna go to the opening?" she asked, eyes glistening with tears. "Honey, we'll come back late," I said, pulling her away from the crowd. A ferry was just about to depart. We rushed on board. A few others followed, but most stayed, clinging to hope that things would be okay. Isabella started crying. As the ferry pulled away from the dock, chaos erupted in the crowd on shore. I couldn't see clearly, but suddenly everyone was screaming. They were running, but I couldn't tell what they were running from. All I saw was people trampling each other, some even jumping into the river to escape. It was horrifying. I was grateful Isabella was too short to see over the ferry's rail. Then a shrill alarm blared, a sinister sound, one that signaled disaster. People on the ferry started talking over each other, panicking, trying to figure out what was happening. No one had answers. Most guessed it was a terrorist attack. I pulled out my phone to call my sister, but there was no signal. I tried Isabella's phone, same thing. Soon, I realized no one on the ferry had service. As the ferry glided down the river through the city, I saw residents opening their windows, craning their necks to see what was going on. All they could see was that skyscraper, its top gone. "Whoa, I've never seen a bird that big," Isabella shouted, pointing at the sky. A massive bird-like creature flew overhead. It was pitch black. I couldn't be sure, but it seemed just as confused by us as we were by it. It circled the city center a few times, then flew away. That creature turned our confusion to dread. We still didn't know what was happening, but we knew it wasn't terrorists. This was something else. Something unprecedented. Unbelievable, yes, but undeniable. The ferry dropped us off downstream, near Ree Square. The city was in a panic. A man was shoving belongings into his car, ready to flee. Others ran around frantically, maybe trying to reach loved ones. Most clustered around police officers, soldiers, or government workers, begging for information. All they got were repetitive, robotic responses. "Can everyone hear me over the alarms?" a policeman shouted. "The authorities can't provide updates right now. Please return home and wait for announcements on the radio. The power's out," an old woman yelled back. "How are we supposed to listen to the radio? Look around, the whole city's dark." She was right. "Just go home," the policeman said. "Lock your windows and wait for the power to come back. We don't know what's happening, but this is the safest." His words were cut off by a commotion nearby. Continued from the notebook. The first person to try to leave the city was a man on a heavy motorcycle. He'd come back to the square. I held Isabella, comforting her while straining to hear what the man was trying to tell everyone. I pushed through the crowd, inching closer. He walked to the center of the square, climbed onto the base of the Freyja statue. Few believed him, but anyone who'd seen the creature that had flown over the city knew. Unbelievable as it sounded, every word he said was true. "The roads out are gone," he shouted. "As soon as the streets reach the city limits, they just vanish. There's nothing but forest out there." He paused, voice cracking. "I'm sorry, I don't know how to explain it, but it's true. The whole city's surrounded by thick, endless forest. No way around it." So it was true. What that other guy said. A policeman next to me muttered. God, it was all true. I asked what he meant. At first, he brushed me off, but when he saw my niece's innocent eyes, clouded with confusion and tears, he turned to me. "We lost contact with the helicopter monitoring the parade," he said. "Right before the signal cut out completely, the pilot rambled something bizarre. He said he was crashing, something had sliced his rotor blades clean through. He kept yelling that everything's wrong, that nothing in his view looked familiar. And right before the line went dead, he screamed, 'West is jungle, east is ocean.' Then more reports flooded in. We couldn't tell fact from fiction, but all told the same horror. The world around Krona had been swapped. In the blink of an eye, the city itself stayed same streets, same buildings, but the sky above felt alien. The land beyond its edges? Gone. Replaced. Finally, the shrill alarms died. Car horns stopped blaring. The chaotic buzz of panic faded. An unnatural silence settled over the city, thick, suffocating, like a blanket woven from dread. It felt surreal. I couldn't wrap my head around what it all meant. I tried to explain to Isabella, but she was only 5. She didn't understand. She just sobbed for her mom and dad, and I had no words to soothe her. She was exhausted, so I rented a room at a nearby youth hostel. The city's economy would collapse soon enough, but in those first days trapped in the unknown, people still took money. The next 5 years were endless torment, a never-ending fight to survive. No one came to rescue us. No one even tried. And it all began on that first night of the change. The sun here was eerily like ours, but wrong. It didn't set due west. It set due north. When I stared at it through our tiny hostel window, I felt only a cold disorientation, as if my sense of up and down had been flipped. The strangest thing about those years? The streets were familiar, but my gut screamed that this place was not the world we'd left. I think that's why people clung to the city center, even trapped, even hopeless. We wanted the illusion of being home. Then I stuck my head out the window and heard them. Screams, gunshots, cars racing down streets with nowhere to go. And every so often, a howl low, guttural, inhuman that made my blood run cold. I never learned exactly what happened that night, but it broke the 2 million people of Krona forever. I shut the window, pulled Isabella behind the bed. She cried, begging for her mom, and I had to clamp my hand over her trembling mouth. I couldn't let the noise draw whatever was out there to us. The next night, the city was quiet. Too quiet. No one dared go out after dark. In the days that followed, I learned the worst truth. The danger wasn't the jungle outside. It was the people inside. I couldn't count the crimes I saw: robberies, thefts, even murders with my own eyes. Crime had skyrocketed, but it wasn't complete anarchy. The police and the soldiers who'd come for the parade tried to hold onto some order. Civilians had no guns, so the authorities faced little resistance. Someone stepped up to lead, the man on the motorcycle. Weeks later, we started to cooperate. The last of the store-bought food was split evenly. Everyone worked, myself included. The university scientists couldn't explain the change, but with hundreds of volunteers, they built a nuclear power plant. It brought electricity back to the city. I helped with that project. I knew nothing about nuclear physics, but I hauled parts, fetched tools, did whatever I could. It was astonishing what we accomplished as a group. Even with fear gnawing at my bones, I felt proud. But our suffering was far from over. I kept Isabella safe, kept her fed, but she never relaxed, never smiled like she used to. And 3 problems grew worse with time. First, food and water. We planted wheat and potatoes in parks and soccer fields, but it was never enough. Our supplies dwindled fast. It rained sometimes, but we feared the water. Something about this world felt toxic. To fix it, we sent expeditions into the jungle. Most never returned. The few who did, they were hollow, as if the jungle had stolen their souls, leaving only their bodies behind. Second, the creatures. For 2 months, they left us alone. But the moment the power came back, they attacked. I didn't see one until later. Some just passed through the city, silent and uninterested. A new policewoman told me she'd seen a naked child with blue skin, solemn, quiet, walking into the city, then turning and leaving, like it was checking us. Others were worse. Indescribable monsters that rampaged through streets, killing anyone they found before vanishing. I saw one once, a massive white centipede, crawling out of a sewer. Hundreds of red eyes dotted its body. It scurried up a building, squeezed through a top floor window. Seconds later, screams erupted. A few people escaped, bloodied and screaming. The rest, torn to shreds. 5 minutes later, the centipede emerged, its white body soaked in blood, and slithered back into the sewer. These attacks kept us in constant terror. They weren't frequent, but frequent enough to keep everyone on edge, every second of every day. Third, the sickness. We found it later. No one knew how it started, or how it spread, but nearly 1% of us caught it. First symptom, a fever, then mutations horrible, random ones. Most left people disabled, disfigured, but rare cases. Beneficial traits. I saw a little girl grow a third eye, its iris shimmering with unnatural colors. She said she could see people's emotions with it. At first, we feared the sick. We called them monsters, like the ones in the jungle. Then we learned the worst. The outside creatures never attacked them. That resentment, it turned to hatred. Continued from the notebook. Once, a mob gathered in the square, trying to drive the sick out of the city. The military intervened just in time, stopping them. In the end, the sick were sent into the jungle, not to cast them out, but to use them. The experiment yielded remarkable results. It solved our food and water crisis. The sick could venture beyond the city, scavenge edible fruits and vegetables, hunt small mammals, and bring them back. It was a turning point for us. Then luck struck again. All our attempts to fish had failed, until suddenly, the river teemed with fish. We soon learned they swim cyclically toward or away from the shore, but shortly after the fish drew near, purple lightning storms erupted over the city. The storms lasted weeks. Some didn't survive. Most did. Eventually, we adapted. For the next 5 years, disasters were rare. We were too busy fighting to survive to dwell on home. As Isabella grew older, she spoke of her parents less and less. We got used to this strange world. Some chose to end their lives, but most chose to keep going, in here in the unknown. Then two things changed everything. The first was the sea expedition. A few hundred people decided to sail out on the luxury yachts moored along the riverbank. Most of the crew were men. It was a grand adventure, one that might finally tell us why we'd been dragged here. It inspired all of us, even Isabella and me. Thousands gathered to watch the ship glide away from the harbor. It reminded me of that day 5 years ago, when we'd lined up for the amusement park. We stared at the horizon, watching the bird of hope shrink to a dark dot against the sunset. We dreamed of the wonders they'd find. We waited for their return. Then a colossal creature erupted from the water. It swallowed the bird of hope whole. Some cried, others screamed. It was a crushing blow to the city. The mere thought of a beast big enough to gulp down a luxury yacht stripped many of their last hopes for the future. The second thing was different. Almost a miracle. A month after the bird of hope was destroyed, a 15-year-old soldier discovered something. When he stood in a specific spot in Freja Square, he could pick up a radio signal from our original world. The station was called Synthetic Wave Radio, and it played nothing but synth music. Hope flared again. But this wasn't the quiet resilience we'd built over 5 years. This was hope of seeing loved ones again. Hope of going home. The university scientists rushed to survey the area, trying to trace the signal's source. They never found an exact location, but they quickly realized it was coming from under Freja Square. As scientists investigated, crowds flooded the square. They clutched radios like children clinging to stuffed animals seeking comfort, begging to hear synthetic wave, to catch a faint echo of home. But the signal only worked in that tiny spot. The police had to push back the crowd to give the researchers space. A few days later, scientists set up large loudspeakers at the base of the Freja statue, wiring them to the radio receiver. Day and night, the speakers blared soft, melancholy synth music. The whole city drowned in it. People gathered around the statue, even ignoring the night's dangers. It became our new ritual. After a day of work, we'd cluster there like worshippers. It wasn't the music itself that drew us, it was where it came from. Those electronic melodies became a symbol of hope for all of us. Sometimes, people would stand and dance, crying through a mix of unspeakable grief and joy. When the DJ spoke, we fell silent, hanging on every word. Usually, they only talked about the music. They had no idea an entire city was listening, devout to every syllable. Rarely, they'd mention things from the outside world. In those moments, we held our breath. Would they talk about us? Had they been searching for us? Planning a rescue? We never heard a word. It was as if the people on the other side of the radio had forgotten us completely, or had never heard of us at all. Still, we didn't give up. After a long time, the scientists finally decided to dig a deep hole, right where the radio signal was strongest. Now, coming to the most recent events. Digging wasn't easy. It wasn't safe. The project took weeks, and we all helped. No one knew exactly what we were digging for. We only knew we were searching for something. When we hit the bottom, the rock was too dense and hard to dig through. The square was piled high with dirt, but our work wasn't for nothing. Right beneath the signal's source, in the rock, we found a cave. Scientists cleared the crowd to investigate. First, they tried to measure how deep the cave was. It took time. We struggled to find a rope long enough. Finally, they determined it was about 700 meters deep. Next, they tied equipment to the rope and lowered it into the cave. What happened next was shocking. Everything we sent down seemed to vanish, devoured by the cave. No one knew where the equipment went, but we all guessed. Somehow, it was returning to our original Earth. Given that the only thing coming out of the cave was a radio signal from Earth, the theory made sense. We were elated. The researchers ran more tests. Many questions remained, but the scientists reached a consensus. That cave was a portal to our original world. Continued from the notebook. But we still had two problems to solve. The first was safety. Every time we lowered equipment to the cave's bottom, the rope attaching it would get sliced clean through, just like that skyscraper 5 years ago. It meant anyone who went into the cave might be cut in half too. We found a solution quickly. We tied a camera to a rope, hooked it up to a screen, and tested again. What we saw, the rope only got sliced when we tried to pull it back up. As long as we left the rope alone, the screen kept receiving the camera's signal, but every frame was pitch black. It didn't worry us much after all. Signal interference in a deep underground cave was normal, and if the camera kept transmitting until we pulled it back, that was good enough. The second problem was worse. The cave was too small. No adult could crawl through it. We tried every way to widen the opening, but the rock was incredibly hard. We couldn't even leave a scratch. Despair settled over us. It felt like we'd reached the finish line, but couldn't take that last step. Finally, one scientist spoke up. His 10-year-old son was small enough to fit. Some argued, others hesitated. In the end, we agreed. The boy's mother fought it. This was no place for her child, but all evidence pointed to that cave being our only way back to the old world. The boy was brave. He knew he might never see his mother again, but he still agreed to go. He said a tearful goodbye to her over a walkie-talkie. Then we lowered him into that 700-meter deep, pitch black hole. We told him again and again. The second he reached the other side, he had to call us on the walkie-talkie. As we pulled the empty rope back up, his mother stood by the cave entrance, waiting for him to check in. We never heard from him again. Weeks passed. Through scorching sun and pouring rain, that mother sat by the cave, clutching the walkie-talkie, calling her son's name over and over again. No one knew what went wrong. We never picked up any signal besides synthetic wave radio. Maybe something blocked all other transmissions, save that one station. But the authorities deemed the cave too dangerous. They banned anyone else from going in. It didn't change how we felt. That cave was our first real hope in years. In a world filled with dangers, unknown creatures that could destroy us at any moment, a small risk to cross through felt worth taking. The cave was blocked off, but the police guarding it thought like we did. We adults might be stuck, but our children deserved a chance to go home. I'm sitting now in the house I've rented for 5 years, writing down everything that's happened. Over the past few weeks, parents have been sneaking their kids into the cave at night. This world is no place for children. They deserve better. So like the others, I'm going to send Isabella back. When I told her, a joy I hadn't seen in her eyes in 5 years lit up her face. I'll give her this notebook. I know she'll find her way home. She'll reunite with her parents. Dusk is falling. This is the last time I'll hold her hand and take her to Re Square. I'm sorry we kept you waiting so long.